Welcome back, sewists, for part 3 of the Tasha coat. This is the pattern here in episode 1, or part 1, which was 2 weeks ago now. I showed all the pattern alterations to this vintage pattern. It only comes in one size, at least the size, or the PDF that I found of it. So I altered it up to fit me. In episode 2, or part 2, we cut the whole thing out, all of the parts and pieces. We put in the darts and we did the welt pockets. The welt pockets are half of that hour-long video. Everything is time-stamped in my videos, so you can go back and watch all of those if you want to. And today we are going to completely finish this coat. So let's get sewing. Because this fabric, which is a lovely knitted and felted wool. It came from the Oklahoma City fabric market, and I have shown them before in some of my videos. I have a couple Oklahoma City sort of vlogs where I've visited or talked about it or done a haul from there. I marked my right side. There's a pin right here, and I did that so that I don't accidentally sew it backwards, where I have part of it one way and part of the other. It's very close to on both sides, but we don't want to accidentally get the front going one nap and the back going the other. So I am just going to clip or pin this. Because it's wool, it heals beautifully. So you could do clipping or pinning. And we're going to sew our center back seam together on our coat. That's where we're going to start. And I'm going to make sure my machine is set up. I just turned it on. And I want about a 3-stitch length. 3 is sort of my favorite for everyday sewing. So we're just going to do a straight stitch. I'm using a straight stitch foot, or it's my 1/4-inch foot. It's a quilter's foot. And I'm using my even feed foot, which is sort of like a walking foot. Not exactly, but close. To sew this, it just gives such an even tension on the fabric, top and bottom. I just looked down and I thought about my shirt. I made this cute little top. It is in this video. I don't show making it in this video, but I wear it and talk about it in this video. And it is my favorite raglan tee pattern. That's the pattern that I made it out of, which is 2 videos. All of that will be linked in the description if you're interested. It is not a pattern you can go buy. It is one where I drafted it off of a ready-to-wear shirt that I had that it fit so well, and I loved it, and I literally wore it to shreds, and so I made a pattern of it. So all of that will be linked below if you're interested in this cute top. Doesn't this give you like sporty Ralph Lauren vibes? I love this fabric. Mood. I'm pretty sure this fabric came from Mood. One of my many Mood sale hauls. Okay, we're doing 1/2-inch seam allowance. That's what the pattern came with. This sews like a dream. All right, so now we have our back seam all sewn together, and I'm going to go press this open. Just give it a nice gentle press and make it nice and flat and pretty. So let's go do that real quick, and then we'll come back and do the next step. Okay, so here is my pressed back. With wool, you have to be careful in ironing. You can get shiny spots potentially. And if you're concerned about shiny spots, or if you're concerned about impressing this cut edge into your outer garment, you can slide a piece of paper, your cutting mat, another piece of the same fabric kind of in here and press along that edge. Just don't press to the other cut edge, and that'll kind of help prevent some shadowing through of that cut edge, but it always makes it look nicer when it's pressed. We're now going to attach our front to our back along this upper edge.
Now we're laying out the front to the back and clipping them together along the shoulder and underarm to sew together.
We are just going to sit and sew. I'm going to sew the tops of both shoulders and the underarm and side seam all the way around. Again, 1/2-inch seam allowance, and then we're going to press everything very carefully. Now this is a knit. It has a lot actually of stretch and give. This would also make a beautiful cardigan. This fabric could be so many things. I'm going to slip this on real quick. It has really long sleeves, but they fold back to make the cuff. So when you look at this and you're like, man, that sleeve is long. That's why. Okay, I've got it inside out, but oh yeah, I got plenty of room. Look at how long that sleeve is. But remember, it folds way back and makes a cuff, which I'm going to do next. I'm going to press it. My mic is messing with my neckline. Okay, I'm going to press this real quick and we're going to move on to cuff and then lining, just like that. This is that inner curve right here of the sleeve. Let me hold it, see the curve of the sleeve. And we're going to take our scissors and we're going to cut up to, but not through our stitches, just around that curve. Be really, I'm going to come back just a little bit. I'm not getting right up to the stitches, close, but not quite. We're releasing this curve because the inside of the curve is smaller than where we stitched, so that when we're pressing, we can open this up and it'll lay nice and flat for pressing open. So now it's easier to press that whole seam. So do that for both underarms, right just in that one little curvy spot only. My coat is pressed. I've clipped the underarm. All of that's ready. We're going to now put together our velvety cuffs. And I've got it marked on the back. What's the top? The top for nap. This is for nap. Now, if you missed my whole nap, multiple nap lectures, there's one I talk about a little bit in the alteration, and I talk about it a lot in the cutting out because it makes a big difference. So I have got it marked top, and that's so that when I fold back my cuff, I have the nap going the way I want it to. Top is what's going to get sewn to the edge of the coat so that it folds back the correct direction. But before we do that, we have to sew our little tube together. So I'm just lining up my edges, again, 1/2 inch, and I'm going to do this for both. You can see, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a great big T there so that I get my my nap going the way I want it to. So we're just going to sew those 1/2 inch real quick, and then I will show you how we pin it on. Now there's only one seam on the cuff, but there's 2 seams on the coat. So when we line this up, I'll show you, but we're going to line it up with the underarm seam, and then the top seam will be, won't have a seam to line up with on the coat. Now, because I have velvet trim, etc. on this, there's special ways to press your velvet. And last week's video has a whole segment on what I do to press my velvet to protect it so that you don't leave a permanent mark of your iron in it, because it's very easy to crush your velvet and ruin it under the iron. So I have a whole thing on how to do that, including how to add interfacing to velvet safely. Now I did interface my cuffs because the velvet was soft, and I just want to make sure I had good weight for that. So I'm going to finger press this. I'm not even taking it to the iron right now. If I could give it a steam, it presses just fine finger pressing. Okay, the edge that says top, let me find my T's, is the one that's going to get attached to the coat. So here's my coat. This is my underarm seam. So we're putting right sides together. I'm putting underarm seam to the cuff seam. I'm going to line those on top of each other and clip it. I'm going to turn my cuff inside out and lay it inside the coat. And now that I've done that, I'm just going to pin the cuff around inside and stitch it around that circle. Super easy. The wool and the velvet are sticking to each other quite nicely, so it's going to be pretty easy to keep them together when stitching. I am going to stitch the velvet on the bottom and the wool on top. The velvet is slipperier, and they're both knit, but the velvet knit is more likely to give than the wool knit. And by putting the velvet on the bottom, I allow the feed dogs to do all of the work of easing between the two and keeping it together. And I don't have to worry about having some movement between my 2 layers as much because the feed dogs are going to do all the work for me. I'm using my clips for this instead of my pins. You could use either. However, the clips, you have to watch with your velvet. Clips can crush it. Usually velvet is, because of the nap, it hides holes pretty well. So we're just going to clip around. If you need to, take your do it as a free arm instead of as a flat. I'm going to go ahead and get both of them pinned in so I can just sew. And you can see I've got wrong sides showing on both sides. Okay, so here is how it looks clipped in. Here's the top seam that goes across the shoulder. And here is the underarm seam, and I have lined up my cuff underarm seam to my coat underarm seam, and so now they're ready to go to the sewing machine. But first, I'm going to make this free arm. One of my big issues is I have this knee lift here that I raise and lower when I hit it with my knee like this, it raises and lowers that presser foot. But when I set up my camera here, it's very hard to access my knee lift. And I have to also sew left-footed instead of right-footed. Okay, I'm going to start in the underarm. Slide this under on the seam. We have 1/2-inch seam allowances. I just want to make sure both cut edges are lined up with each other. All right, there's one done. All right, the cuff is attached inside there. I'm just going to make sure I don't have any little buckles or foldovers or anything. And what I want to do now is I'm actually going to pull that cuff out this way. And I'm going to push back all of this seam allowance towards the wool, and I'm going to stitch it down. I'm actually going to turn the coat. Let me turn the coat inside. We're going to turn it to the right side because I want to stitch this on the right side like this. Okay, so there's our pretty cuff on the end, and this is actually going to get folded up. It'll fold up like that. That's going to be gorgeous. So we have sewn, I've just done, it's not going to be seen, it's going to be on the wrong side of the garment, but I've done a little top stitching on all of those seam allowances on the cuff, where the cuff attaches to the jacket. So that's done. We're going to now switch to lining. So we've got the coat all put together. It's time to work on our lining and our facings. So I'm just going to take you over here and just show you we're going to put together our little back velvet. I cut all my facings out of the velvet, so I'm going to put my velvet pieces together. The back of my lining from last week, I talked to you about how I cut it larger around that back seam so that I can make a vent or make a pleat so that I have a little extra room in there, and that just keeps it from pulling holes. If it's too tight, it pulls on the outside, and it can also pull when you're putting it in and off, putting it on and off. And work on lining for a minute, and I'll show you how it's all going together. We're going to put together our whole back lining with the facing on it. We're going to put our front facings on the front lining, and then we'll sew them together on the, like we did the coat, on the top and bottom. So that's kind of where we're at for lining pieces. so here is the back lining, and I have already just sewn it together on the center back seam and pressed it. So here, this is at the hem, and of course a lot of this is going to go away, but you can see here's my little pleat, so I have all this excess. And then at the top, I have pinned on my facing to the lining, and again, it's got the little pleat in there. Let me see if I flip it this way, you can see. So there's a little pleat below it. Now I show how I cut all of this last week in the video, so you can see this is how it's going to get sewn together to make our pretty lining with the facing. And I chose to do the facings out of the velvet because I just think it's going to feel so nice against the neck, and when it peeks through, it's going to be so pretty. So there's that. And then on the front, there's the front facing. I'm just getting ready to sit and sew all these in. I have just pinned my front facing to my front lining. Sew these together. We're ready to go. So there it is. It kind of reminds me of a choir robe, the way that looks, but this is the back neck facing. This is the back with the little pleat in it. It's not been pressed yet, but looks pretty. All right, I have not pressed anything yet. I've just sewn it on. So here's my front facing, and down here at the bottom you can see it ends early because it's shorter than the hem. So I just measured to make sure I have it lined up. So I'm going to do both front facings. I have the back facing done, and then we'll put both linings with their facings on together. That's the next step. So let me get this other one in, and I'll show you how we put our linings together. I'm loving how this looks. And when I press this, I'm only going to press on the satin side. I'm not going to even try to press on this side unless I get my velvet scrap out to do it. All right, let's talk. I'm piecing together my back and my front lining. And the sleeve is going to be shorter because I cut it off for where the cuff attaches to it on the inside. But we still have a dart that is in the front, this dart right here. And I did not sew it in on mine. Instead, I'm just folding it out like a pleat. So on the inside, I'm just going to have a little pleat. You could also make it into gathers if you want to. We just need the fullness in there. It's not going to make anything more bulky. This is probably a medium weight wool, but it's definitely a pant. So I'm just going to fold it out, or you could do gathers. You could do it in multiple pleats if you want to, however you want to address that dart. But that needs addressed so that on the inside, you're going to have just a little pleat there where a dart could be. Now you could go ahead and just put the dart in if you want to. That's the other option. I don't want to. I just want it to be soft and full in there. So that's how I'm going to treat it. So here is the top going up and into my facings, and I just made sure my facings line up. We want that line to be right on top of each other. So I'm going to get all of that pinned and sewn together. Not very exciting, very straightforward, very similar to what we just did here. Okay, so where I took out the dart, which would have been right in here, I took that fullness and I just put it into a little pleat in this shoulder so that you can see. So the pleat for fullness in the shoulder is similar to the pleat that I added to the back because, again, you need a little fullness, extra fullness in that lining for fit and to make your garment last longer too. All right, almost done with the lining assembly, so we can then add it to our coat. Okay. I am pinning all the way around my facing lining combo to the coat, and I'm making sure to line up all of our seams so everything lines up perfectly. And this is what I'm noticing. Everything looks fine and happy except right here. So this is the facing piece that I cut out, and I expected it to end at the halfway mark, but you can see how much deeper it is. And I don't see that in the directions. It looks like it should have ended differently. So I don't know why that is, because I used their facing piece. I'm not sure what the difference is, but this is what I'm going to do. As I'm doing my 1/2 inch, I'm going to do the 1/2 inch all the way around to the end of the facing. So the facing is going to be a little deeper before I start where the lining and the hem are on the coat. So I'm just going to extend this. I could shorten it, but I don't want to. I'm going to leave it nice and deep. All right, we're all pinned in, and I'm just going to sew around. It's going to be a long seam because we're starting like on the right front and sewing all the way around across the back into the left front. So because of that, you can get some shifting. The longer the seam, the more likely you are to get some shifting between your top and bottom layers. I have got my even feed foot on to help counteract that. I'm also going to sew with the wool on top because it's more stable. And I've got this little pin right here. It's going to be hard to see, but this is where I'm going to start sewing because that's the difference between my facing and my hem, that discrepancy that I have, and I don't know why. So that's where I'm going to start sewing. I'm just going to sew all the way around a 1/2 inch. We have to go back after this, and there's a lot of handwork. We're going to turn up our hem. I'm going to hand baste in the hem because I want it to be invisible, and then we will attach our lining to it. They show a lot of top stitching on this, and I don't know that I want to do that much top stitching. I know why they do it on big, bulky fabrics like this. It just lays flatter if you stitch it down. But I like the look, the clean look of no top stitching on something that's a little more elegant. In order to press this, I need to get out my scrap of velvet so that I don't crush any of my beautiful facings. So now that we've done that, we're going to reach in and pull apart the lining and flip it around. I'm going to look and see if I need to do any clipping along this neckline on the inside. Here's my beautiful lining and facing. Yeah, I need to do a little clipping along this upper edge, so I'm going to flip through again and do that. It's tight along that neckline. And then here's the outside. So when you're looking at it from the outside, that velvet peeks through. So let's go back in up here at this neckline, right up here in the back neck. I'm going to flip it around, and we have that thing where the cut edge of our garment is smaller than the sewn where our seam allowance is. So we're going to get our hefty scissors here, and we're going to clip along this neckline up to but not through. So we're clipping through this neckline up to the stitching line, and this is going to release that edge so it'll lay nice and flat. I need to oil these scissors every time I get them out. I've got more pair, but these seem to be the ones that I always grab, and they are squeaky. So we're just going to give a little snitchety snitch along here, and then we're going to flip it through. And now that neckline lays so nice and smooth and pretty. Yep, that's what it needed. And if you have to, in here in this rounded part, if it's feeling bulky, you can do some more clips and they'll kind of overlap each other and they won't, which I think I'm going to do. I'm going to do a few more clips right up here in this curve. You can even do pie wedge where you take a little wedge out and that helps get rid of some of that fullness. Can you see how there's a little pie wedge there now? So just in that curvy part, to help with it laying nice and smooth. After I give this a press all along this outer edge, I'm also, while I'm at the ironing board, I'm going to press up my hem all along here. Now they show in the directions, they bias bind the hem. You can cover this hem if you want to. If you don't want this raw edge, because I'm going to attach my lining to it, so it won't be seen. But if you want to do an additional step, you can put a bias or a strip of satin or a ribbon or something over your hemline. A lot of times they'll sew the ribbon along this raw edge, and then they will do this hand stitching to the other side of the ribbon. So that's definitely something you can do. I'm going to look and see if I have a ribbon to use. I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go check real quick and see if I have a ribbon that will match. And if I do, we'll do the ribbon. All right, so I found this ribbon and it matches. It's a little more casual than I would like. I would love to have had a satin ribbon, but I only had super thin white satin, and I don't want to use that. So I'm just stitching this onto the raw edge of the hem. I'm just going to go all the way around, making sure my seam allowances are open, etc. And then once that's done, I'm going to press up that hem, and we will use this. We're going to catch from the ribbon into this when we do our little stitching, and it shows at step 10. Here we go. So you can see, and they also show the shoulder pad, which we're going to put in the shoulder pad next. We can't get this done until the shoulder pad's inserted, so shoulder pad coming. Can you hear that popping noise? That means it's time for a new needle. Okay, so you can see my ribbons covering my raw edge. And now I'm coming in, and I apologize, I know the light is not great. This wool just absorbs the light. But I'm just doing a little quick whip stitch. You can also do, there is a stitch where you crisscross it. I'll do a couple in here just so you can see. So you come up, I'm going to take a little bite, and I'm not going all the way through. So on the outside, you cannot see my stitching at all. So I'm going to take a little bite. And then you come down and you take a little bite. And by bite, I mean a little stitch. And what this does is it's a swing stitch. It allows the fabric to move a little bit, and it's good for coats. Now, even if I do a swing stitch, I usually will do something like this at the beginning and end, just for security reasons. And I'm pretty sure the directions actually show doing a little swing stitch like this. Now, because I have such a nice thick fabric, it's very easy to do a blind. You cannot see the stitching at all. So there you can kind of see, I hope you can see the little cross hatches where it is making, and then that gives a little bit of movement in the hemline. So I'm going to sit and just do this all the way around my hem, and then we will come back and do all of the final finishing, the finishing of the lining part. We're going to do a couple little tacks to tack the lining down. You can actually completely attach the lining, but I usually just tack it at a couple spots along the seam instead of completely attaching it. It's up to you, and we still have to do the sleeve. So back in a little bit. Now I've been doing the little swing stitch. I know that's not the exact name. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a little cross stitch all along the tape until I get to a seam. And then you can see it's not as pretty, but I stitch it pretty severely along those seams. And I also ended my thread. I run out of, I try to get enough thread to go from seam to seam. It doesn't always work out. And then I've tied my knot, and I come in from behind and out. So I've hidden the knot inside there, and I'm ready to come back to doing my little swing stitch. And I'm going to do this all the way along. Okay, I'm going to do my swing stitch. Oh, and let me just show you on the right side, it completely absorbs the stitches. You cannot see the stitching at all. All right, we're sewing in the shoulder pads along this seam, and normally you make the shoulder pad end with your sleeve seam, but we don't have a sleeve seam because this is a dolman. So I actually measured where my natural shoulder is, and I made it just a ½ inch longer or wider than that, and I have I pinned it in like that, and then I've done a few stitches up here just through the seam allowance, and then along one side I've just done a little catch stitch, and then you can see it's just stitched a little bit through those few layers just to get it to hold in place. And I'm getting ready to do this one the same way. And then we will have shoulder pads in, and we are really getting close now to finishing up the lining. We have the sleeve to do, and then we have to finish the hem along the pink part of our lining. We will be done with this, and we will be ready to try it on. I'm excited to see how it looks. I gotta style it though. How am I gonna style it? All right. Gonna do a little whip stitching along here. I want to do it on the back side. Now I'm only going through one layer of this shoulder pad. I'm not trying to catch all the layers. I don't want to compress it any extra, so I'm just taking a few long stitches just to get it tacked in a little bit, and I make sure it's centered. Now, if you have a shoulder that rolls forward, or if you have a hollow or something like that, you can offset your shoulder pad to balance out the figure if you need to. And that's done in the trying on. So put a safety pin through it and put it on, and look in the mirror and see what you need to do to adjust your shoulder pad. Just want it to be secure and not fold over on the inside. Now once we get it trapped in there between this and the lining, it'll stay where it belongs. Put a knot on this side inside the seam allowance where it can't be seen, and the shoulder pad's tacked in. Oops, I keep bumping my camera. I have it so close. Alrighty. On to lining. We are looking at the inside. You can see here's my lining. I've pushed up the sleeve lining. It's pressed at the hem, but that's it. And then here's my cuff pulled back, and I'm going to just tack down the cuff at both seams first to get it nice and secure, and then I'm going to do a little basting stitch around to hold it in place. Then I will bring down the lining, and I'm going to tack the lining over that raw edge so the lining will be attached, so that because this cuff will fold to the outside. So we're just getting this all finished on the inside pretty, so that when we fold it over, this is what the outside's going to look like. It's going to be so pretty. So we're going to start down here. I've got a knot already in my thread, and we're just going to tack down this. At both seams, I'm going to get them down really good and tight. Make it nice and secure, but I'm going to go around and do that same swing stitch like we did in the hem. It's invisible to the outside, but we'll tack down this velvet cuff. And like always, I really overdo it right at the seams. So you've already seen how to do this. So now, except this time I'm not using the ribbon. So I'm going to come up, take a little bite, and come down and take a little bite. And I'm just going to go all the way around the cuff, just like this. And on the outside, on the outside, you can't see it at all. Completely invisible. All right, I'm going to do that, and then I'll come back and show you how to attach the lining in the sleeve. All right, so here is where I just hand basted that little area. You can see there, you can see where they are, and I'm just covering that just a little bit. I've pressed up my hem, and I'm going to come along and stitch this, and I'm doing my best to do an invisible stitch. So I'm going to get this started. I want to make sure I don't make it too tight, like I don't in length. So I'm going to check to make sure I'm about a ½ inch down. I've got a knot in my thread. I'm going to hide the knot up inside. And then I'm going to do the little trick where you tunnel into your fold and then come down right below it. So now that I've got everything kind of lined up, I'm going to go through the fold. And then I'm going to come down and catch this. And I debated on which color to use. I went back and forth between the pink and the burgundy, or the plum. I decided on pink. This is only going to be on the inside. You won't ever see this on the outside. But you can see how, if you do this where you catch in the fold and take a little bite below it, it almost looks like you machine stitched it on. It really hides your stitches. that is how it looks when stitched. Just makes it invisible. So I'm going to work my way around and get both sleeves done, and then all that's left after that is to do the bottom hem of our lining and do our little tacks. I'll be back in a little bit. All right, so here it is folded back. Isn't that pretty? And this is how it looks on the inside, and you can't really see the stitching at all. It's nice and hidden. So there's one sleeve. I am noticing this kind of wants to roll a little bit, so I'm also going to come in and do a little bit of tacking down of the facing on the inside. I'm going to open it up in here on the inside, and I'm going to tack down in the seam allowance, the facing to the seam allowance of the coat, just to make this stay down better so it doesn't want to roll back up. I'm going to do that on all of the seams, the shoulder seams and the center back seam, to make it stay better. And don't forget, this shape of this little collar here, you might need to do a little clip right in there in your seam allowance. So I'm going to get this other sleeve done. I'm very pleased with how pretty that looks. Trying to get it in, there we go, get it in the light so you can see the colors. Yeah, I'm very, very pleased. What you're seeing right here is the seam of the coat, so I'm going to have to do a little extra pressing. I may even come in and do some little hidden hand tacks to make that stay flat underneath there, but I think it's very pretty. Very pleased. There's see how nice those look together. Okay, so here is that back seam where my little pleat is, and I've opened up and I have just stitched down this seam allowance right there at the facing to the seam allowance of the coat, and that's just going to make this facing not pull up, make it stay in place. So that's going to help hold it in, and if I need to, I'll do another one over here in the shoulder if I see that it's trying to peek around. I can also do a couple little invisible stitches in the seam allowance to the outside, because this fabric is so good at hiding the stitching. You just cannot see, so you cannot tell I've done any hemming other than it needs pressed, but you can't see any stitches at all. No stitches show. Love that. It just hides everything. I put the ribbon on, but it's a little stiff. I'm not loving it like I thought I would. Kind of wishing I hadn't done it, I'll be honest. But I'm going to give it some pressing, and it does look nice on the inside, but it's a little stiffer than I wanted for my fabric. So don't know if I'm super loving it. To help keep this facing from rolling out or rolling in, I have taken on the inside the seam allowance of the facing, and I've sewn it to the dart leg. Just made a little stitch right there. You don't have to do a lot, just a little bit, just a tack to help hold it, and that's going to help keep that facing where it belongs so it doesn't roll around. These are all the little tiny fiddly things we do at the end that really make the garment stay nice and lay nice. All right, this is the little seam at the neck, and I have taken a needle and thread. You can kind of see my little tail right there. And I have just gone in and out a few times to hold down this, because this wants to roll out a little bit. And so now it's, I did the stitch in the ditch, but you can't really see it. Here's the other side. I've done it on both sides. So it completely hides it if you get right in that seam. I did tiny knots. There's a little tiny knot right there. You can kind of see it, but I did that to hold it down. So now all that's left is this hem at the bottom. So now we're going to work on that. Okay, I am all done except for this bottom hem, and I should show you what I'm looking at. I'm pointing out the window there. So I've just put in a few pins. I've got it pressed up, so it's just ironed right now, and it's pressed at an angle here, and it's coming up higher. I'm going to just tack it just below the ribbon. I don't want the ribbon to show, and I was trying to decide, do I want to just tack it so it swings free, or do I want to go ahead and stitch it down? I think I'm going to stitch it down like I did the sleeve earlier, so I'm going to come in and do that little running hidden stitch all along this hemline, and then this coat will be done. And on the inside here, can you see the angle this takes? I should have, and I didn't, and I regret it, but I just didn't think I can also take this apart. But normally I actually stop and pull my hem up here, so it doesn't come all the way to the bottom like that, and I just wasn't thinking. And I've been vacillating, do I want to pull it out, or am I just going to live with it? And I think I'm just going to live with it, honestly. I've been going back and forth on it. But that's what I'm going to do. Let's look at the time. It is 4:22, so I came up here at 9 a.m. I have been working on this whole time. The handwork is one of the things that makes it take such a long time. So I'm going to go ahead and just do the handwork on the hem, and then I'm going to style it. So I'll show you that in the morning. But this is where we're going to end for tonight. It'll be all the same for you. But tomorrow morning I will film with a good fresh light because the sun's starting to set. And I've got to go down and eat pizza and watch the Super Bowl with my husband. I'll probably do this handwork while I'm sitting there, if he'll let me leave the lights up bright enough for me to see. And we'll be done with this beautiful coat. It needs another good pressing. I'm very pleased. It's just so lovely on the inside. I'm just loving how all of these fabrics and findings are looking together. It's making me super happy. Okay, next time you see me, I'll style the coat and we'll be wearing it. See you then. I'm back up to do the last few things, and there's something that I did not, after sleeping on it. I showed you how the lining kind of went at an angle, and I just am not happy with that. So I'm going to take out a little piece of the lining and sew it so that my lining is even around the hem and I don't have that weird little angle. I've gotten to this point, I'm not going to leave something in that I just really don't like. So we're going to fix that, and then I'm going to take you over and show you how cute this jacket is. So let's fix that real quick. All right, so this is the part I'm going to take out. I'm going to take out just a few stitches to about here so that I can make it even all the way around the hem so that it just comes to below this ribbon. So on both sides, I'm going to take out this much, going to back stitch right there and pull up my hem, and then I will finish attaching my hem. I'm just not happy with that. Okay, just a few stitches later, I've got it. I just did a little back stitch there, and this is the height. So I'm going to now finish stitching down my lining, and that's it. But doesn't that look nicer than, here's the side that I haven't done yet, and you can see how it angles. Like here is the height it should be, and then it slowly angles down. And this, I think, looks much more polished and finished. Okay, this was quite a process. I love this so much. This could easily be worn almost like a blazer instead of a coat. It's not super heavy, but it's perfect for the Oklahoma climate. Look at how cute. I love the hang, kind of dips a little in the back. See how it just swings from the body? It's not a super full, like trapeze style, but it is slightly A-line. It swings really nice. It does not call for a closure. You could easily do a frog closure on here if you wanted it to close, but I like how it just hangs. I also am pleased with my contrasting facings. I think that if it flies open or if it peaks, it's pretty. I just think that it makes it a little more attractive. I'm loving everything about it. I think it's really cute, very comfy, such an easy thing to wear. What do you think? I hope it shows in the camera. The one thing I am really seeing is that it just doesn't show up well in the camera. I have to lighten the film. So we'll see how it does. Let me move my hair out of the way so you can kind of see how the collar and the back lays. I am super pleased with all of my contrast pieces, my facings out of the velvet. I think that it's just prettier, especially since it does not have a closure and it does swing open. To have it something luxurious and beautiful on the inside, I'm really pleased with. I just like all of those things. Of course, I picked it out, so of course I would. But I think that it does add to, and it also looks appropriate for the era. This is a 1950s pattern, and this is very much a 1950s look with the velvet. I saw a lot with the fur trim. You could easily do this with the fake fur trim on there too. I did see when looking at jackets from this era, there were a lot that had the faux fur or detachable fur cuffs and collars. Okay, I am curious, did you watch all 3 videos? What did you think? How did you feel about such a long process to get a video or to get a project completed? Normally I try to do it all in one video, sometimes a 2. This is, I think, the first time it's taken me 3 weeks to complete a project in video form for you, and it was a long process. It's a pretty simple and basic style with the dolman sleeve. That part is easy. It's all the little extra details and all the handwork and stuff that really added to the time. I'm looking forward to making a little matching outfit. I don't hate it with the plain black jeans and little boot. I think that's cute. I would wear it. And we're getting ready to have another little freak snowstorm, especially for us. So I think I'll actually get a little wear out of this coming up soon. Okay, some questions I have for you. Are you interested in a hat video? I have a couple vintage hat style patterns that I've downloaded that I'm interested in. This wool would be gorgeous made up in it. I also have a houndstooth. I would like to make some berets. So those are things that are kind of in my mind. And I'd like to know if you're interested in something like that, if that's something you would be interested in seeing. I also was considering doing I don't know, like a page boy style, sort of, it could be a man or a woman's cap that is also quite popular. Hats are in right now, and I am loving it. I would love to have some more hats. I only have some fascinators. I have a hat box, I think, full of hats. I need to go find it, that were given to me back in college. It's like 1991. So old, a long time ago, but awesome, from the Accessory Lady. If you know what the Accessory Lady's shop was, leave me a comment. I'm so curious. I remember going in there in the mall with my mom. She also wore gorgeous hats. My sister wore hats a lot back in the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. So I'd like to wear a hat. I'd like to have a hat. I think it would look really cute with this gorgeous coat. Set it on my dress form. One of the things I like about this pattern is I sized way up, and it's on a size 6 dress form, but because of how it lays, like this is one I can continue to wear no matter what size I am. Especially since it fits so well across the shoulder. So here's the pretty cuff turned up. That's how it looks on the inside. And the pretty pockets. Here you can see the dart. And then when you look inside the coat, that's how it looks. Thanks for sewing with me. I'll see you next week for another fun video.